Welcome to day 29 of our study in the book of Ecclesiastes. The title of today's lesson is Youth in the Dawn of Life Are Vanity. Our verses for today come from Ecclesiastes chapter 11, beginning in verse 1. Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. Give a portion to 7, or even to 8. For you know not what disaster may happen on earth. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves on the earth. And if a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it will lie. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. As you do not know the way the Spirit comes to the bones in the womb of a woman with child, so you do not know the work of God who makes everything. In the morning sow your seed, and at evening withhold not your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, this or that, or whether both alike will be good. Life is sweet, and it is pleasant for the eyes to see the sun. So, if a person lives many years, let him rejoice in them all. But let him remember that the days of darkness will be many. All that comes is vanity. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart, in the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. Remove vexation from your heart, and put away pain from your body, for youth and the dawn of life are vanity. Here are some quotes. Too bad youth is wasted on the young. The longer I live, the more uninformed I feel. And finally, only the young have an explanation for everything. Those are clever quotes about being young. It's hard to find good quotes that come from young people. I wonder why that is. But for my money, Charlie Brown and his friends in the Peanuts cartoons had an awful lot to say about life for being such young kids. For instance, Charlie Brown said, "I've developed a new philosophy. I only dread one day at a time." Linus said, "Big sisters are the crabgrass in the lawn of life." Lucy said, "Try not to have a good time. This is supposed to be educational." Charlie's sister, Sally, said, "I think I've discovered the secret of life. You just hang around until you get used to it." And finally, that lovable little dog, Snoopy. "Yesterday I was a dog. Today I'm a dog. Tomorrow I'll probably still be a dog. There's so little hope for advancement." Of course, those were from the mind of Charles Schulz, the creator of the Peanuts cartoon series. It was the life through his eyes that we really saw in the characters of his work. A sort of innocence of youth mixed with the wisdom of the aged. I think Art Linkletter's show, Kids Say the Darndest Thing, gave us some real insight into the mind of children. When Art asked one little boy about what was the hardest thing about school, the little boy replied, "Buttoning my pants." Another girl, when asked about what the perfect husband would be like, she replied, "Someone who provides lots of money and loves horses and will let you have 22 kids and doesn't put up with fights." When Art followed up with the question to her about what she was going to be when she grew up, she replied, "A nun." Now there's some real nuggets of wisdom. Solomon had a considerable amount to say about youth and being young, mostly in a cautionary way. From his book of Proverbs, we read in Proverbs 1, verses 8 through 10, "Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching. For they are a graceful garland for your head and pendants for your neck. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent." And in Proverbs 2, beginning in verse 1, he says, "My son, if you receive my words and treasure up my commandments with you, making your ear attentive to wisdom and inclining your heart to understanding." And finally, in Proverbs 3, we read, "My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life and peace they will add to you." In fact, the first 9 chapters of Proverbs are a series of essays, as it were, directed toward the young to learn wisdom to guide them throughout life. Then, wise sayings of life follow in the remainder of the book. I have linked the book of Ecclesiastes to the book of Proverbs throughout this study, for I believe they are so very similar. I've often thought in my own mind that the book of Proverbs was written earlier in the life of Solomon, and Ecclesiastes later in his life. Many scholars believe the same thing. Now, in chapter 11, these last few verses, Solomon turns and heads for home with his teaching. He's going to wrap it all up for the reader to consider. Once again, it seems as though this treatise of sorts is directed to the young, and in particular, the young adult, the youth of perhaps in their teens. For the very young are not going to grasp such complex principles as Solomon has laid out and will finally bring to bear in the last chapter. And for that matter, many in our advanced years struggle with the concepts Solomon has brought forth in this most intriguing of books. My sister and brother-in-law had an interesting conversation with an elderly gentleman many years ago, and what she related from that talk has stuck with me over the years. This gentleman lived in a house that had no windows, and with all seriousness, he told them that if they knew what was coming, they would go out and hang themselves right then. Now, that's not the person I want teaching young people of this age, or any other age for that matter. Youth need hope, and that is exactly what Solomon brings to the young man. Verse 9, "Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes." In a sense, be glad you are young. Your whole life lies ahead of you. Enjoy life. As was mentioned in yesterday's lesson, he also adds a caveat, a warning. But know that for all these things, God will bring you into judgment. What's further in verse 10? Remove vexation from your heart and put away pain from your body, for youth and the dawn of life are vanity. Even today, what Solomon declared in Proverbs rings true. In Proverbs 20, verse 29, "The glory of young men is their strength, but the splendor of old men is their gray hair." There is a term that is heard from time to time as it relates to that which is done in one's youth. It's called youthful indiscretions. That is to say, those regrettable deeds done in one's youth that can be explained in a sense by declaring these were committed without the advantage of age and wisdom that would prevent one from doing such things. The mantra of the 1960s counterculture declared, "Never trust anyone over 30." First espoused by Jack Weinberg at UC Berkeley. It seemed to be a rallying cry for the young. Now that those who survived the 60s are themselves in their 60s and beyond, I would imagine some, and hopefully most, have seen the vanity of such youthful indiscretions and the advantage age has over youth. But if they haven't come to that conclusion yet, well, let's just say they will get a charge out of what Solomon has to say when next we meet and look at chapter 12. Are you ever trying to relive your youth, or do you now prefer age and wisdom? And Lord willing, let's meet here again tomorrow for another lesson in the book of Ecclesiastes.